So when it comes to kind of the pace and the direction for the session today as well, would really like to mention that being that it's a little bit more of the the intermediate side, uh, going in with a little bit of working knowledge that there is some understanding that you've had time to use the system. That way we can kind of, as I touch on some of these topics, I might just do a little bit of review at first, but we're pretty well going to be jumping into content, especially how I approach the searches just in the beginning. It's going to be a little bit more of a review. So if there was something that that you may have missed, I would definitely suggest jumping into the introduction, the session that would have happened just kind of before this one. But as far as what you're seeing right now, right, understanding where dashboard concept is something that's a little bit new. As soon as you log in for the first time, you will be faced with kind of the applications that make use of your credentials. I'm just going to make my way through straight to ITSO Real Estate. It does open up a new tab, so we won't be needing any other applications on the dashboard at this time. So I'll just close that up. And now this screen should look really, really familiar. So we're on ITSO Real Estate. The only thing that might be a little bit different for yours, perhaps you have a slight change in some tools, as well my widgets that I have on the screen here, remembering that all of it can be manipulated, right? You just kind of drag them and drop them into different sections. So yours might look slightly different, but generally the same idea, this being the home page here. As far as the agenda, as I mentioned, there's going to be a little bit of review at the start. What we're going to do is approach a search, and we're going to go into a residential search at the beginning here, walk you through a little bit of how I approach the search. That way we can have a quick look at kind of the things that involve clients, right? Such as sending listings out to your clients. Once we have a working list of results, we're also going to set up a bit of an auto email. We'll go through that screen, the process of setting up the auto email, and adding the client. As soon as we have that, I'm actually just going to send it to myself so we have a little bit of a test there. We can have a look at what the client portal looks like, talk about the client portal in a little bit more detail, and then we're going to talk about some settings, especially activating notification settings for that portal so you can be communicating back and forth in a timely manner when your client is kind of reacting to something in that portal. That pretty well sums up the first section. So going from the search and finishing off with an example of what the client sees, as soon as we kind of wrap that up, it'll bring in kind of the second portion of today's intermediate training, where we are going to go in depth in the input tab. So rather than in the search section, what we're going to go to is this add edit in the input section, and we will walk through the different screens just to make sure that you're comfortable putting a listing up, of course, on the MLS system. Okay. So without further ado, we'll start with that first portion. As I mentioned, it does start with a search, and we're just going to go in residential search in this case. Okay, I've left mine so that it is a little bit of a default. Okay, and here's part of where I said, if I do go a little too quickly, feel free to follow along, but I would suggest jump into the introduction to Matrix, where we went really, really in depth in the search, if I happen to go a bit too quickly here. Okay, when I approach a search, okay, and your way might be slightly different, but I find that the best foundation when you start a search, at least for myself, being really, really visual, is I like to start from the map first. So rather than starting to click on a bunch of options on this screen, I really do go to the map first. With one thing in mind, however, when we go to the map, right, we have a massive amount of information here at our disposal. Good thing and bad thing, right? It can be a little bit overwhelming to work with the map at this point, just because there's so much going on, right? Even if I try to zoom in on the particular area that I'm interested in, I'm going to be a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of listings and information that's on there. So my solution to this, just so that I could work from the map as a starting point, is from the criteria tab. The first thing that I do on here is I actually zero out my price on purpose. Okay, we're going to come back here and get rid of this, of course, in a few steps. But the whole reason behind this is getting to 0 matches so that when we go to the map, it's just not as distracting. And we have this clean slate to work from. Now you can see when I go to zoom in and I'm looking at a particular area and I want to kind of work from something that my client might have told me that, hey, this region here, Glen Abbey and anything north of that QEW, that's where I'm looking for a property. Well, I can actually see that visually now as I go in, right? As I zoom in closer, seeing the streets, things like that. It's just not covered in pins of listings, right? So this is going to be so much easier to work from. The goal here is that we're going to be using a couple of drawing tools that are available on the map rather than breaking down region-based criteria in this section. Okay, my whole reason for that is just because, for one, we're sharing information with multiple boards at this time, right? We have a data swap in place with the Hamilton, or with RAB, Real Estate Board of Hamilton Burlington. We have a exclusive agreement for shared information with TREB as well. So for the locations of Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills, we can see those Toronto listings if they've been put in on the Stratus system. We still do get to see them on our end here, as long as those locations hold true: Oakville, Milton, Halton Hills. What that does create, however, is if I was trying to break down something really specific in the neighborhoods, right? Well, I may have to choose all my TREB neighborhoods. I have to match them up with my my Oakville ones as well. It could get extremely difficult to create from this kind of list view, where when you're working from the map, it'll include all of those all at once if you draw it instead. So I just find that that is so much easier to work from. But you do have to kind of zero out your results just so you can see it a little bit better. What I'm going to do at this point is from one of the tools that normally one of the first things that I'll activate on the map before I start drawing is the neighborhood tab. Okay, so it's just a boundary that you could set. It comes from this layers icon here. Kind of looks like 3 sheets of paper on top of each other. And when you click on that one, it gives you some availabilities for overlays. Okay, we choose the neighborhood one, which allows us to see the neighborhoods that were set out by the boards. Right? You're going to be able to see the other Ortus boards from this view as well. But what we can do at this point is perhaps it just gives us a little bit of structure now for what we're trying to draw. Right? Perhaps our client was, in fact, just looking for more so Westmount and West Oak trails. Well, what we could do is we can choose one of the drawing tools now. I'm going to choose the polygon option and maybe do a little bit of kind of a rough drawing. I know I'm zoomed in zoomed out, let's call it, just so that hopefully everybody can kind of see what I'm working on, right? You're probably going to go in much more closely and draw a much better shape. But just to include, hypothetically, if my client was only looking for these 2 areas, what happened to be in this case Westmount and West Oak trails, well, I've gone and selected them, and as a result, we would expect that if there is a Hamilton shared listing, a Toronto shared listing, anything that's shared from other boards, including any member of ITSO that posts a listing and it's pinned in this location, well, we've just captured it. Okay, so drawing that section is going to be a lot more effective. Now that the drawing's there, I can go ahead and I can actually just remove the layer, and we are left with this area that we're using as the inclusion. As soon as you have that, right, you can kind of work your way back to the criteria tab and eventually take away, specifically, first off, that zeroed out price, right? Just what we had taken off so that we're not distracted by the rest of the things going on the map. But as a result, when we take that zeroed out price away, we're going to get every single active property within the boundaries that we set. Okay. So with this, I mean, now that we have something to work from, we're working with 58 listings. now is going to be the time finally, right? We have a range of kind of prices in this area. I mean, I think I even saw one as much as, well, there we go, 550,000. And I think I saw one at a glance that was like, yeah, over 2 million. Okay, so huge, some things we're going to have to break down, of course, right? But at this point, now we have a base. We have something that we could work from, and it brings this second step where we will start to break down the criteria finally. Too often I get a call from a member on the phone, or just panicking a little bit. Hey, I'm trying to find some properties for my client. I'm trying to set up an auto email. Why am I getting 0 matches? Well, the system, for what it is very, very specific. So if you start on this screen and you start making selections, and by the end, before you even get to the results, if you have like 20, or I think I've even seen 30 different things checked off on this page, it's gonna be very hard to find something that specific. You're probably gonna have 0 results in the end, right? So that's why you start with that map, create the base. We've got 58 results right now. What I would do at this point is make minor selections, right? Were we trying to cut out a certain portion of this? Are we just looking at houses, for example? What is our client looking for? Okay. Well, if I make a selection like that, the important thing is that I keep an eye on my matches so that we can, right? We don't want to hit 0. We want to have something we can present. If it does turn out that there's no matches, we're going to work backwards. We're just not going to make 5 selections at once. Just keep an eye on kind of what is going on down there. Okay, so we have our 26 matches. What I might add in for sure is perhaps what my client had as their price range, right? Maybe in this case, we'll go something like 1 million to 1.2 million. Okay, perfect. So even with that, now we have 5 properties to work from. Right? Notice that I'm not going to go 3 plus, right? I'm not going to go just with bedrooms and bath. Like, we have 5 matches. We can go in and have a peek at those. Okay, let's go ahead and go back to our map. Get an idea. Okay, looks like they were mainly in this Westmount section. How they came up may have to do with just our price range in general, what we had set up. So we have some houses in this area, but now we're going to get more information about these, have a look at them, start making our comparisons and things like that. But we're working with 5 in this case. It looks like it does kind of match everything we were looking for so far. And if we just jump over to the results screen, of course, we will be able to have a look at what we pulled through. Okay, and your screen here might look a little bit different than mine. Okay. When it comes to this listing display, you absolutely can make changes to it. Okay, you can drag around these different options just by clicking and dragging in the gray space, just as well as you can insert and remove columns. Okay, so something like neighborhood, all I've done is I just clicked on the section, insert the column, and I ran a search to find the neighborhood tab. But in this case, it shows us really, really quickly here, right? We have Westmount, West Oak Trails, TREB. Okay, so we have a couple of different neighborhoods. That's where our drawing becomes really effective, right? It would have been extremely difficult for me to find what looks like 3 different sections here in the neighborhood had we been doing it right from this screen here. Right? It would have been very, very tough to find those specific ones and line them up properly. Our drawing took care of that, right? Much easier to kind of work from that. I was trying to select just this section, doesn't look like that's possible, but right in this neighborhood tab, we can kind of get a quick glimpse of that since we've added that category. If you are making any changes to this section, okay, as well, it's going to be extremely important that you go to this little gear icon and set that as the new starting default. Okay, what I mean by that is if I go in and I take city over here and I drag it over maybe just a couple spaces to the left. Well, if I want that change to be there, next time I run a search, I need to click on this gear and set this as my search starting default. The first option up here, you see this pop up on screen. Your search defaults have been set, and what will happen is the next time I run a search, it actually will be in this order: neighborhood followed by city, rather than city being over here towards the right. Okay, you must set that new starting default. If you ever want to go back to what you had previously, you can just hit reset the system search defaults. As soon as you click on that, this is the base that you would be seeing had you made no changes. And this will also happen, the search, it'll always go back to default if you don't update it to what you're trying to change it to. Okay, two really, really important things there. But very quickly, right, again, if I wanted to add something on that has to do with the address, click on a gray space, insert column. I can just type something that has to do with neighborhood in this keyword search, even NEI already brings it up. Apply, and I've got my neighborhoods. Okay, there's a whole range of these that you can add on. Just make sure that when you have what you're looking for, that you set the new default. It will tell you if it's been done. Okay. With this as well, we are seeing a really great range of property types. Being that our neighborhoods are so diverse right now, well, we also have, right? We have a listing that is on this MLS system, being the new 400 system. We have an XH, which is a Hamilton shared listing, 2 TW listings that are coming in from the TREB shared information, and well, one more of them. Sorry, so there was 2 of them that are 400s that are inputted directly on this system, perhaps from an OMDREB member, perhaps from another member of ITSO. Okay. As far as this list that we're working from right now as well, right? First step is, right, how do we send that information out to the clients? Well, when you go and if you're looking down at your action buttons towards the bottom here, you will notice that things are all grayed out. Okay, thing is, you do have to make a selection to action a specific item. If you click on it, it will let you, kind of give you a bit of a nudge there as well and let you know, right? If I click on it right now, it says you must check at least one item. What it means by that is on this left-hand side, you can select which ones that you want to action. Okay, if I was looking to action all of them at once, right? Or perhaps just an individual listing. Either way, you'll see that the options become available finally when it comes to the action you're taking. If I wanted to just send out this individual listing, right? Perhaps this is the one that we'll just end up using this one later on when we look at the client portal as well. But one thing to understand is, even though I'm emailing out a listing and sending this to a particular client right now, it's important to understand that what the client is receiving is in fact a portal, right? An interactive portal that they can go in, look at, they can leave notes, they can communicate with you through that portal. So it's not just an email of a listing that's just a one-page document. You're emailing access to a portal that your client is going to go in to look at that listing. Okay, testing single emailed listing. Let's call it that. Okay, hello. I'm going to write a really silly message here. Okay, of course it is going to be set up just like a general email, signature pulling through, and we'll just send that through so we have it for later. I'm just going to send it to myself. We'll end up using it in a couple steps once we get to the sample client portal, but let's go ahead and send that through, for example. Perfect. So the email's been sent. It's just sent to myself so that we can kind of pull on it later on. Next thing as well, right? Perhaps in this case, maybe we were looking for something a little bit different, not just an individually emailed listing. Perhaps we want to go to that next concept, right? Creating an auto email, okay? What an auto email is trying to do is more so, what it will do is it will send new information to your clients as long as what that new property or that new information is meets the criteria that you've set out. So looking below your results here is always going to give you a little bit of a summary of what's going to come into play, right? In order to bring us this list of 5 listings, the actual listing had to be residential, active, right? We chose house. This is our description of what we drew on the map based on latitude, longitude, and we had a price range, okay? So kind of a bit of a summary of what's going on. If we created an auto email and 2 days from now, a listing met this criteria, well, the auto email is created so that our client would receive that listing as well automatically, okay? Let's go ahead and look at how to set up that auto email. Okay, first thing is selecting a client here. Hopefully I've got one that we can just use. I think I created a couple. You're going to notice that mine are just kind of fake ones for training. So let's try this Eric one. Looks like I've accepted that one and that one. There we go. You know what? We're going to use this Brian Gaskell one. So I'll just use our IT manager in this case. I put a little Brian too because this email does not exist. So just it'll bounce back kind of thing, but just so that we could see the process type of thing. But let's go ahead and use that one. As any kind of email, right, it's going to follow that same theme. So we're going to create a bit of a subject as we go in. So however personal or depending on your relationship with the client, right, I might just go your future home. How about that? Okay, and whether you end up putting like a smiley face, it really totally up to you. So I'm just going to go your future home. I am going to put this though, in case I've used that before. Let's go training. Training your future home, exclamation point. Perfect. You get to have an idea of what the system is going to generate by default as well. Okay. So when it comes to your client's access to that portal, right? Remembering that whether it's an individual email, whether it's an auto email, your client is accessing a portal to see the listing. So the first thing that's going to have to come into play where an auto email is concerned is for Canadian anti-spam laws, your client must accept to the terms and conditions by actually clicking on the link to join the portal. Once they've done that, the portal will activate and will begin sending them automated listings that meet the criteria. Okay, that step is really important, and we will look at kind of the status types as well in just a few moments. But this does kind of give you a bit of a description of the welcome email. Tells them, hey, please click on the link below in order to begin that process, right? Really important there. Whether you want to add some more info, change this up a little bit, please feel free to, but you definitely want them to be aware that they must click on the link, or else the portal just will not populate properly. They do have to accept to those terms. Okay. There's also a recurring email that may come through, which is, right, that whole scenario. Maybe a couple days down the road, a new listing meets the criteria. Well, the email they'll receive is going to look a little bit different. It'll be on this recurring email side rather than the description of the welcome email. So you have the option to kind of manipulate either one of those if you want something a bit different than the default. That first section really is just really general kind of creation of the email itself. Okay, what we'll do as well is, as you see here, it does provide you with the criteria. Okay, the criteria is what we talked about, that section that was a bit of a summary below our results, right? Before we entered this screen, we could see, hey, things had to be residential, active, had to be a house, description of the drawing we made on the map, plus our price range. Okay, so it lets us know if we notice anything strange in here, right? Well, we would maybe back out. We would go back to the criteria tab, make the change that we'd like to make for our client, come back here and confirm it type of thing. Okay. We do also have an option here. It's called concierge mode. I will double back to this one, just so I'll talk about the schedule first, and then we'll just come right back to concierge. I feel like it's easier to explain just once we've talked about the schedule here. Okay, and I do want to send a really quick message in the chat as well. Okay, apologies there. As far as the schedule, Okay, there's something really, really distinct about this differentiation here between ASAP, emails are sent as soon as possible, as well as if you do decide to go with a daily email, where emails are sent out on the days you choose. Even these two options, they react very, very differently, okay? So what happens with this first option? Emails are sent out as soon as possible. What this is trying to say is the moment that a listing meets the criteria that you've set out and makes its way into your client's portal, they would also receive an email notifying them that that has taken place. That's ASAP, right? As soon as something hits the criteria, your client gets an email notifying them that it is now in the portal. Okay, that's one option. Maybe as we go with kind of pros and cons here, we only had 5 results. We chose a really specific region. It ended up being pretty well in and around 1 or 2 neighborhoods kind of thing. I'd feel confident using ASAP because there was only 5, right? What I mean is I wouldn't expect that if the auto email's live for, let's say, 1 week, I wouldn't expect that there'd be like 50 or 100 that are going to hit that. Those are very specific criteria we set out, right? It's been refined. Be careful with this one just so you're not overwhelming your client, right? If you have a much more open criteria type and you're sending 15 or 25 listings for any reason, I might not use this one. I would be afraid of sending, just bombarding your client with too many notification emails, right? Perhaps I would choose a different option, such as a daily schedule instead, okay? The thing is, however, this does work very, very differently, okay? This daily schedule is going to send an email specifically reminding your client that they have a portal that they can access. So that's really specific. If things have changed since the last time it sent a message, it will give a little bit of a summary of kind of what's happened in the last couple days, perhaps. However, it's not tied to those listings in the same sense as ASAP. Okay, if I choose something like Tuesday and Friday, okay, in the AM, okay, so this will send an email for AM. When I tested, I think it was roughly like just past 7 o'clock in the morning, potentially 8 AM type of thing. What it would do is it just sends a reminder, hey, don't forget, you have a portal. Here is a link to your portal, okay? The thing to remember with the portal is your client can access that portal at any time that they want, right? They have the link, they can go in, if listings came in Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, they went in, they looked at them, they deleted them, they did some work in there, they even communicated with you. Whether there's something new happening Tuesday at 8 in the morning or not, this one is still going to go out, okay? Really important to note that even if no traffic has happened, your client will receive an email in the AM on Tuesday and Friday just reminding them that they have a portal. It's more just to keep them in a loop as a little, hey, don't forget, okay? Not tied to how much traffic has happened though, so just bear that one in mind. Okay, if they really want one every single day in the morning, make sure that they understand what they're getting. Okay, it's going to send this email even if there's no new listings. Okay, bear that one in mind. Where ASAP, again, kind of total opposite. There's pros and cons for both, but ASAP will send a notification every time something new reaches that portal. Okay, monthly is going to react the same way as daily, just fewer reminder emails. It's going to be once a month rather than whatever daily schedule you end up choosing. Okay, for mine, we're going to go with ASAP just for now. I know we got to go back to concierge and talk about that, but because ours only had 5 results and it's pretty specific as far as our drawing, I'd be confident using ASAP if that's the option we were going with. So let's make our way back to this concierge option. Okay, this is going to give you just one more layer of, let's call it almost like a filter that you can put on the listings that do in fact reach your client. If you want to have a little bit more control over the ones that your client is viewing above and beyond what you've set automatically, well, what concierge mode is doing is you will have a glance at those listings first. You can choose to either approve them or reject them. If you approve them, they're going to go through to your client. Okay, so just kind of like one extra step there, rather than it just meeting the criteria and going directly. Your client you would look at it, you would double check, hey, does this have the right square footage or the right amount of bedrooms that they wanted? And you would hit approve if that's the case. Okay. Just really important note for this one, again, pros and cons of all the different options here, right? If I choose concierge mode, it does take away my schedule. So it's not going to be ASAP anymore. It's going to be the concierge mode. Okay. Do we also want to send a notification email? Right? Gives you a couple options here. However, what's going to happen is you need to stay on top of this now, right? Understanding that if you choose concierge mode, your client is not receiving anything if you're not approving the results. Okay, it's really, really simple to do. I'll show you where that is once we kind of save our changes here. But yeah, you would have to stay on top of those. If you have a whole, like maybe you have 10 or 15 auto emails, well, you have to kind of go in and stay on top of your concierge mode ones and improve them, make sure that your clients are receiving information. Okay, but you can control that a little bit, which is nice. Okay, going to go ahead and we will just hit the save option. I switched it back to ASAP in this case. Okay, and let's just hit this save option. So I did have a little message about the concierge mode there. So can you edit the results or only send some and not all? Absolutely, that's the whole point of concierge mode. What would happen is, and you know what, I'll show you that now because we just saved the auto email. The auto email is active, right? How concierge mode looks, okay, on ITSO Real Estate, you do have a specific widget that governs your concierge mode. Okay, if you don't have it open presently, just make your way to your home screen, perhaps clicking on the logo or My Matrix dashboard. You have a widget here called Concierge. It might be in your additional tab if you're not making use of it, but we can have a really quick peek at it here. Okay, if I open this up, right, I didn't choose Concierge on that one that we just made for Brian. However, I knew that I had some in the list here from a previous one that I was testing. 5 listings need your approval. This is what it would look like, right? If I go in and I look at those, it's for a particular client, that kind of false ERIGAR that I created, right? When you click on those, I can now approve or reject, right? It's just a very specific screen here. These are not visible to my client just yet. They haven't reached the portal. There's probably other stuff in that portal that I sent previously, but these new ones have never gone. Right? If I want to take this particular listing for any reason that is on Blue Oak Circle, and I don't want this one to go through, then I would reject it. Right? I've got 4 left. I have a look at them. I check if everything's good to reach the client, and I just hit approve all 4. You can select them first if you'd like, but right, I would just hit approve all 4, and then we're good to go. Right? That one is complete. None of your concierge mode auto emails have unsent listings. As easy as that, right? It would say the particular client that it's for, you would deal with it, and you either approve or reject what's in that list. Okay, like one final look through, more so than just the automated portion of it. Okay, but it's just so yeah, you can filter out in case there is, maybe one of your clients is very, very particular and does not want to receive a very specific type of property. If the automated search isn't going to do a very good job, it's going to be better that you concierge mode it, and then you can filter that last piece out yourself. Okay. Okay, so I've got one. Will that rejected listing be rejected permanently, or will it show up again later? Unless there's a change of status, right? That one, there wouldn't be any reason why that one would show up again. Okay. Something really specific would have to happen, like perhaps it was canceled and relisted or something like that. Like then it may come back in. But as far as that listing how it is right now, wouldn't reach it again. You wouldn't have to reject it a second time. Something new would have to kind of occur to it. Like when it changed to like any kind of different status, it really would have to be like cancel and relist is the only one that I could think of that might still meet your criteria, but provide like a new MLS number type of thing. So you might have to reject it in that case, but aside from that, the concierge mode is really kind of straightforward to use. Okay, perfect. All right. With that, now that we've kind of sent up the auto email, as I mentioned, this last portion of this section here, couple of things, right? We're going to end up having a look at what a client sees in the portal. There are also some settings that we're going to go in and have a peek at. Okay, so let's just start off with having a look at that portal. So I did email out that individual listing previously, so I'll open that up and I'll bring it down to this screen. So when your client is emailed a property, right? Again, whether it is an individual property or whether it's an auto email, it's going to look very much like this. Okay. The only difference is that, right, we sent a test email for this one. It was just an individual listing. The only thing that would be different, of course, is on the auto email, that longer generated kind of message that was in the body, advising them that they must click on the link to accept and that kind of thing, right? But it will still look very similar to this. Just a lot easier to work from this individual listing for myself in the test, because activating the auto email, going through those steps is just a little bit tougher to do in real time during the training. Okay, but this was kind of the title we chose. Maybe a couple things to point out about this. Okay, first here, it is coming from a particular source on MLS at northcentralmatrixmail.com. Bear that in mind. Okay, if for any reason it's landing in junk mail or any of those different folders because of whatever security is set up on your client's email, right, they may have to just allow messages to come in from this source. Okay, as well, if you are a little more used to the previous way that these would send out, well, before, right, it used to be like this long blue link that our clients would click on. Now it has changed to be a little more refined here. It is a view listing button that they've put together, and when you hover over it, you can see that it is the matrix.ITSORealEstate.ca, which is the destination here. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and click on the link to view the listing, and it'll take us straight into the client's view, right? If your client is going in and looking at a listing you emailed them, right, it is going to be in this format. This is the client portal. Okay, we have a bit of our kind of branding and a header that we set up in previous training. The first thing that your client sees, of course, is a little description here. They get the map towards the left, and on this right-hand side, they would be able to start seeing a bit of a glimpse at the listings that were emailed through. In this case, we just have the one, since it was just that test that we were running. And if we go ahead and enter, just by clicking on the actual address here, it'll take us to that next portion of the portal where we can see a little bit more information, where your client is going to start seeing public remarks, right? Details of the property, and now the rest is very comparable to what was there before. Part of the reason why I really wanted to show you this client portal is because some of the utilities that your client has in here, well, they may be trying to communicate with you. Okay, so what this is called is portal notifications. We'll talk about the notifications, and then we're going to go into our settings to make sure we are notified of those notifications. Okay, some of them are accessed right here from this little heart icon. Okay, if I click on that, I would see 3 different titles that your client has access to, right? If your client is trying to show you genuine interest in the property, there's a few ways they may try and reach out to you, right? aside from just emailing you or calling you and talking to you on the phone, right? What if they are trying to do it right from the client portal? That's where your notifications will be important. Right? What if they left this message, added this note, and I just don't know how to find the note that they put in? Okay, that's what the whole idea of the notifications comes into play. From the little heart icon as well, right? You'll be able to see, right? What if your client set it as a favorite? What if you sent 5 listings to your client in the portal? They favorited one property, they saved one property as a possibility, perhaps they discarded one listing and then left a note about a different one, right? Well, they're trying to communicate with you inside of this portal that we've given them access to. Going to be really, really important that you start kind of seeing those come in, right? It's going to be impossible for me to go into each individual portal and just have a glance and double check if they happen to have left a note, right? Something like this is a private conversation between your client and yourself. Okay, you can talk kind of back and forth a little bit. They could leave you a note. You may reach out to them and respond, type of thing. Okay, but really, really important there. If I just go over to our other screen, there's a couple places where you will notice this interaction. Okay, the first one is when you glance over your contacts list. If I go into my contacts, I would see that each client that I've created, or each contact or client that we've kind of created in the system, of course mine are just kind of test ones, but there's a bit of a section here towards the right. This is only a summary of how much traction there's been, right? If your client has discarded any listings, if they have set possibilities or favorites, or even left some notes, you can see it from this section here, just a bit at a glance. However, you don't want it to be too late when you see it. So let's go have a look at the settings that you can activate so you can be notified of those. Your settings option used to be from your My Matrix dropdown. It has moved over, however. Okay, it's over here towards where your name is, where you're logged in. So in my case, it just says, hello, Eric. If I go ahead and click on settings, I'll be able to see portal notification settings is the one that we're looking for at this point. And if we click on that, okay, we're able to set up a bit of a schedule here for these notifications. However many things you want to select on here is completely up to you, okay? I know that one that I find members really, really like to make use of is a daily summary email. So if you do have a whole bunch of auto emails set up, perhaps you'd rather just get a summary every day that tells you a little bit about it, all of the different interactions, all in one kind of document. Well, you can do the summary version. As well, when it comes to the notification that you can get ASAP, if you have one of the major carriers, you can even go as far as get it over text if you'd like. Okay, but there are probably some ASAP ones that I find very, very useful. For example, perhaps I would like to do those main items that we see in the portal, such as if somebody sets a favorite, right? I want to get to it as soon as possible. If a client leaves a note, I may need to be notified so that I can respond as quickly and in a timely manner, right? So these I may do as soon as possible, followed by maybe a whole range of the summary ones, just so that I can keep an eye on everything in general as well. Okay, if there's one in here that you think is super important, right, maybe the only one I'll do is setting a favorite or setting a note, and it would be even a text message to my phone, for example. Okay, but with that, just towards the bottom when you're finished with your selection, you hit the save option, right? Again, the whole point of this is just so you can a little bit of a lending hand, keeping an eye on that traction, right? Maybe if you have like a whole range, maybe 50 auto emails all active at the same time at some point, you're probably going to need a little bit of those summaries and things to help out, right? Well, all of that kind of happens within this portal notification settings area. Just go there one more time. So over the name where you're logged in towards the right, click on settings, portal notification settings. You just make the change and hit save. Okay. Another thing as well is we talked about the auto email. So the final setting that I want to talk about in this section has to do with understanding whether that auto email is functioning properly, okay? And you will see that from your auto email section. So it's under My Matrix. Go into your auto emails. Okay, and we're seeing, awesome, a little bit of a range of different status types here. There's 3 different status types. Really glad that for the training I managed to get all 3, which is really good. Third one coming in from our new one that we set out. Okay, so I'll just talk about these statuses and how you can make some changes to these if perhaps it doesn't seem as though your client is receiving the information. Okay, you can see some of that from this screen. So your 3 different status types. The very first one that I'll talk about here is this open circle with kind of a white fill. This means that the client has not clicked on the link and accepted to the terms, so they're not receiving any new information. Okay, it even kind of it might be a little small for you guys to see, but if I hover over it, it says client must click first email's link, which has already been sent, in order to activate this. If for any reason my client has not received that email or went to junk mail or anything like that, you can resend it. Okay, just to the right, sorry, the left, if I click on the drop-down menu, I get options and I can resend the welcome letter. Right? I need them to click on that link or else they're not receiving anything new. So that's the first step. And I can tell that they haven't clicked on it. If you see this day later, 2 days later, right? However quickly you want to get to it and resend it, or if I see this open circle, I may even reach out on the phone and say, hey, we set up that portal, right? Perhaps they just kind of forgot about it and it's there and they just haven't clicked it, but you do really need to get them to click on that or else they won't get anything new, right? Thursday the next week, when they go in for the first time and they accept, well, I mean, there might have been some stuff in there that never made it to the portal, right? So the sooner they can activate it, the better. And you could resend the welcome. So stay on top of that for sure. As soon as they do click on the link, it then changes over to this checkmark version of the image, which is, maybe I can zoom in a little bit. Oh, that's so much better. Okay, so we've got this circle. It's got a green fill with a white check mark. Okay, that is trying to tell us that it is working properly. Any new listings are making their way to our client. That's the final status, that it's just perfect. Everything's good to go. Okay, it tells you a little bit about the status, it looks like as well. It's telling me that it is kind of set out on an ASAP. So we went concierge with notification on this one. Our final status here is this exclamation point with a red background. Okay, that means that it's been disabled. Perhaps our client disabled it, perhaps we disabled it ourselves. Okay, maybe our client found a property already and we don't want this one to get sent through to them. Right? Well, we may just make a selection here from the left-hand side and hit disable. And what would happen is this one here would move over to this red exclamation point as well. Okay, you have control to kind of deactivate and then even delete it completely if you'd like. If you leave it deactivated, maybe you're just looking to keep some information for later, right? You may just reactivate it at some point, let's say. So I've kept a couple here that I deactivated, right? Maybe I would go into the settings, keep this criteria, and I would just like reactivate it at some point. You see that this one that I've deactivated, it was last run even a few months ago. Okay, maybe we're in a bit of a transition. My client is saying, hey, let's revisit this perhaps in the fall. Well, maybe I wanted to keep their criteria to get some information, and now is the time that in this new conversation I'd reactivate it, let's say. Okay, deleting it will get rid of it completely, and then I don't have that history, right? So whether you want to disable it or delete it, completely up to you. But you do have your 3 status types, so just bear those in mind. If you want a properly working auto email, it does have to move to this kind of full green color with the white check mark. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out as we go back to kind of the next steps here. And that does kind of wrap up what I had planned for that first segment. As I mentioned, right, we went from starting out a really good base for a search, zero the price, work from the map, and then keep an eye on your results as you work through the criteria. Okay, from there you receive listing displays, at which point we might have made a couple changes to the list. Okay, if I go to a recent search, for example, you remember us adding in the neighborhood section. You can move any of these around. You can add or remove a column as well and just search for what you're looking for. Remembering that you really do have to click on set this as my search starting default in order to keep that change there. Okay. We ended up making some selections. We set up an auto email, talked a little bit about how concierge and the status types work, and went into our notifications as well. So it really does wrap up at full circle that whole section on communication with your client, because a lot of the utility that we use, right, is some of these auto emails, keeping our clients in the loop, sending new listings, discussing those listings, right? Big part of it right there. So kind of going full circle in those different screens and options. And as I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and transition at this point into inputting a listing. Okay. Segment is, I want to say that it probably is about 35 minutes. It should take us right to the end of the session. With that, if you have any questions about the first part, let's go over and talk that a little bit more in the question and answer, but do just have to get into kind of the next part of the training here. Okay, which, as I mentioned, is all going to be about the input tab. So let's hop in there. So at this point, right, this is if you are representing a client and you want to list their property on the MLS system. Well, let's go ahead and have a look at what that looks like here. Okay, I'm going to open up the input tab. It's like I was testing with one earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete it first so that we can start from scratch. Delete this incoming listing. There we go. Here's what yours will look like if you haven't created one or tested with one in the past. This is what we want to see. I just totally forgot before the session. Apologies there. So what we have is in our input section, right? Add new, edit existing. We can provide an MLS number. Well, we don't have any at this point, right? I deleted all of mine maybe a little bit late, but I did get rid of them just so that we can kind of start from a clean slate. And what we're going to work from is this add new option. So I'll make that selection. The one that we are going to work from is, just to keep it kind of as simplified as possible, we're going to do a residential add edit. It's likely to be the most common one. And if there is anything in these other ones, that, right, the screens are going to look very, very similar. But let's work from the residential add edit. When you are approaching this form and you're making your way into entering all this information, from the start here, you will absolutely notice that you are faced with three different ways to begin. I can fill from previous property information, I can fill from Geo Warehouse, or we can start from a blank listing. That's so the three different options there. I'll tell you a little bit about pros and cons about each, because you do want to pick the right selection here just before we get started. Okay. So our options as they are, right? Filling from property. What this means is that we would make a quick, perhaps we already know the MLS number, right? Maybe we have an MLS number in mind and we just search for it and click the fill option. Well, what it's doing is it's going to take the MLS information from that previous listing and put it into our form so we could have some of the work completed for us already. If we're not searching from MLS number, we may search the system via using criteria first. Okay. To tell you the truth, I really, really advise staying away from this option. Okay. As you know, there are some MLS rules that come into play when you are putting information on the matrix system, on the MLS system, right? If you're filling from property information that belonged to a totally different agent, I would never start a listing that way. Okay, just with the possibility that I brought in some information that they incorrectly put in there, and now I'm taking ownership for it. Okay, so I tend to stay away from the fill option unless it's a scenario where I listed the property myself 6 months ago. Perhaps I'm just creating a new agreement, right? We're starting a new commencement date and everything. And I believe that I'm confident that I put in very correct information, right? When it comes to using information that a different agent put in, I just don't trust it enough. You have to go through with a fine-tooth comb and make sure everything is correct, right? Or else you're taking ownership for that. So I do tend to stay away from this one. But you can do it, right? If the property's been up on the market, someone listed it 6 months ago, and you want to use some of that information, you're more than welcome to. Just not going to happen in the training here. I really prefer to just start from scratch, go through the boxes one at a time, and I'll show you how to flow through that way. Okay. The two options that remain, we have fill from GeoWarehouse or start with a blank listing. Okay. When you picture this section that we're about to get into, well, the idea is, right, we filled out our property information sheets or our info data sheet. It's been signed by our client already at this point when we're ready to input the information and represent them. So realistically, what we're doing is we're just transferring the information from that sheet over to this online version of the page. Okay, so if we were going to start a blank listing, it would be just that. It would be the different screens would be blank, and we would start to make selections and input information just from empty kind of criteria availabilities type of thing. Okay. The difference here with fill from GeoWarehouse is if you do want to use this option, it will provide you with a couple of the items that you're going to need either way. Okay, it's not overwhelming, right? It's going to be things such as your PIN, your ARN, a little bit of the property information, and such as kind of the address that you found, as well as most likely your legal land description. Okay, so it's not going to fill out half the input for you, but it will give you some of a start. So I really do lean towards the fill from Geo. Okay, so based on our three options, filling from a previous MLS listing, filling from Geo, and starting with a blank listing, I would always lean towards either GeoWarehouse or blank listing. In this case, let's definitely have a look at GeoWarehouse. Okay. So what you're able to do after selecting this, okay, we have two different options. So we have to track down the property and make that connection between the MLS system and GeoWarehouse. We can either do that by entering a 9-digit PIN, which we would have gotten directly from GeoWarehouse, or we can do a quick search here within Matrix. However, we must enter the city, the street number, and the street name at the very least. Okay, so I would go, for example, we're just going to use the 125 Navy Street location to keep it simple. Oakville, 125 Navy, right? Thing is, right, this is really, really specific stuff. Like, it has to be entered. Got to get your spelling right, right? I can't have one L in Oakville type of thing if I want to find it. But you run this search, and you'll see that it does provide us with that little connection between the Matrix system and GeoWarehouse. We just have it loading here for a second. But look, it has pulled in some info. It's confirming, hey, 125 Navy Street, here's the ARN number. The owners currently are the Oakville Milton District Real Estate Board. Okay, perfect. Even gave us kind of that 9-digit PIN that we might have looked for on GeoWarehouse. I am going to, let's see, maybe we'll go with revise search. Perfect. So I just wanted to come back to this screen. As you saw, I had to really, really specifically enter those three criteria to find this property. What I tend to do instead, okay, and I just went to Tools, GeoWarehouse in this case, just to open up GeoWarehouse in a new tab. My reason for doing that is because I find that this search engine is just a lot more forgiving. If it is a property that I'm not perfectly familiar with, right? Some streets can have some strange spelling, things like that. I do find that this one's a lot easier to work from. So I start from here and I end up bringing the 9-digit PIN into the section where it's providing us that option. Okay, you can decide for yourself if you prefer to use the matrix search or the GeoWarehouse search, but you have access to both. Okay, GeoWarehouse here is put on by TerraNet. It's an aggregated, all this MPAC data. I hope that everybody has had a chance to hop in and have a peek at this, because it is a very, very cool program that is available to you as an OMDREB member. Okay, but as you zoom in, for example, right, maybe I'll go look at 125 Navy directly. Okay, coming in here where Lakeshore Road meets Navy and making our way up, oh, corner of Navy and Church, perfect. This would end up being 125 Navy Street, right? So I can either do this, make my way visually right to the property, and then I could just copy over this 9-digit PIN, take it over to my other tab, for example, maybe just hitting Control C on my keyboard, something like that. Or if I use the search engine that we were talking about is a little bit more forgiving, well, let's try to start typing it in, right? 125 Navy Street, N-A-V. Okay, so I've only put in, you know, a few of the information. I haven't even finished typing the word, and it's providing me with suggestions. That's what I mean by just a much more liberating search. It's a lot easier to find something. You don't have to perfectly, like this had to be spelled perfectly, had to be Oakville, had to be 125, and must be Navy in here, right? It's a little more rigid than 125 NAV giving me what I'm actually looking for. Okay, so we'll pull that up. We can click on the search and the results that came through, and it will hone in right on that property. Okay, it gives us a last second to kind of confirm that that's the information we're looking for. And if we want to copy over the PIN at this point, that's when we can just bring it over, copy it and paste it, and we have our 9-digit PIN. As soon as we run the search, let that load for a moment, you'll notice that it looks extremely similar. Again, we're just making a link between Matrix and GeoWarehouse at this point, so we still have to confirm, hey, is this what you meant? Yeah, the owners are correct, perfect, there's our PIN, our ARN. When you hit fill, that's when you make your way through to the actual form. Okay, so we'll just hit fill at this point. Give it a second to kind of go through and populate. Okay, now we are finally on the residential add edit. Perfect. Okay, a few things to notice, right? We have kind of a bit of a linear flow through our direction here. It's kind of, I believe we're going to end up generally taking this left to right approach to it as well, just for the sake of the training. Starting with our general tab. As we go along, we're definitely going to be talking about some of these options towards the bottom. Pardon me. Some of these are going to be your very best friend as you work through this screen, so we're definitely going to be making use of these very shortly. When it comes to filling out these different pages and different forms, however, anything that's mandatory, okay, is going to show up in this kind of highlighted yellow or orange, whatever you want to call it. And from time to time, you'll have a description towards the bottom if something perhaps is missing or an error has occurred or anything like that. So keep an eye on some of the things that might show up. The really, really important thing to note as you work through these tabs is that a lot of them are dynamic. And what I mean by that is if I choose property subtype house, okay, or condo unit, it'll yield very, very different results from one to the other. Okay, so if I choose house, maybe style will look a bit different. Okay, that's the dynamic aspect of it. So bear that one in mind. Okay, whenever you make a selection as well, right? Don't make like 50 selections and complete the entire form before clicking your validate. You're going to make a few selections and double check with your validation. If I click validate right now, even after making one selection, what'll happen is it is going to do a review through the form and double check, hey, as a whole, is there anything missing? This is one of your best friends on this screen. really does end up helping out. So it's confirmed that this option is going to work for us. Everything else has received this little red exclamation mark. Okay, you have them on all the other mandatory ones, and as well across the top here, the other sections we have to go to, noticing that we do not have an exclamation point next to common elements, right? Only had I chosen condominium or apartment condo would I end up with a little exclamation point here. This is not a mandatory field for my property type. So I can even, when we work through here, we're going to look right past common elements, for example. Okay, so bear that in mind. Let's make a couple selections on here. There is something I definitely want to mention as like a precursor as we work through here as well. Please don't get hung up on the selections that I make. The important ones that cause some questions and things I get inquiries on, don't worry, I'll point those out. But when we get to something like exterior, interior, you're not going to see me choosing asphalt driveway. Okay, that's all stuff that you and your client have figured out. We're going to focus on some important things and kind of move through the form. Okay, so with this first one, I will end up selecting some options here. I know we're going with house, so again, don't get hung up on that. This is the 125 Navy Street is the office location for OMDREB. We're going to go with house because it's the most common. Okay, just a precursor to this section. Common interest. Okay, and we'll just select some no's here. What I really want to get to is the validate option again to see how it updates. Right, we made the correct selections on the form with regards to the property we're working from. You'll notice that when you validate, hey, now you have this little mental kind of check mark that, hey, you've completed the general section, we can kind of move on. If we didn't fill this out completely, perhaps we have something to come back to later on, which is fine as well, right? But bear in mind as you work through, using validate, it's going to save a lot of headaches. So use it throughout, not just once at the end, okay? You do have a new section here. We'll double back to this one later on, okay? Because you do have waterfront now, remembering that this ITSORealEstate.ca system is a combination of two major groupings of boards, right? We took the entire Ortis system that we were used to at onregional.ca, we combined it with the Ontario Collective. There is access right now to over 20 boards and associations on the front search that you're running. Something that was previously extremely important and used in the Ontario Collective was the waterfront. So we'll come back and talk about that one. The waterfront tab is something that will show up on here if you select yes. Okay, I want to say it's right next to common elements. I'm just going to do it as a test real quick. If I hit validate, perfect. Notice that this pops up. A dynamic tab enters in and gets created here. Okay, there's going to be some waterfront information to do later on. If you pick yes, I'm going to choose no for now, and we'll talk about that one later, right? Notice that it's there, common elements, waterfront, exterior, validate, common elements, exterior. So it has gone away, has to do with those dynamic options. One more thing that we can do as well here is the importance of saving your work as incomplete, okay? Let's have a quick look and see if we could do it even at this point. I know we've barely done any information, but let's click on that. Aha, looks like we do have something that we need to address before we can save it. Really important to note. We clicked on save as incomplete. It has not given us a confirmation or an MLS number. So what it's trying to say is you have not saved your work. That's extremely important. Don't just click this button and then close your laptop screen. You need a confirmation. The system's trying to say, hey, there's something wrong, and it honed in on that error. It's saying it's on the property tab. So make note of that. Every time you save as incomplete, you need a confirmation screen. That did not happen here. Let's go have a look at that. So in our property section, it looks like what it got hung up on in this case is the city actually. So there was something causing a little bit of a discrepancy here, something that we might have to enter ourselves, right? Notice that there's some pre-filled information. We're going to talk about that shortly, but perhaps putting in Oakville. So let's find it in the list, a little bit lower. Oh, where are you, Oakville? There we go. Okay, let's try to save and complete at this point. Now that we've made the change, we'll let it load. Hopefully it's the only thing it needs. If not, it'll let us know, of course. Give it a second here. Perfect. This is what you need to see. You have to see input succeeded. Your listing has been successfully saved as incomplete, and it provides you an MLS number. If you do not see this, again, you have not saved your work. Do not complete 30 minutes or however long it takes you to create an input. Click it only at the end and walk away from your computer before seeing this. Stay away from that. You need to see this in order for your work to be saved, okay? This is my confirmation. Now I'm confident that if I, that information has been properly archived for me so I can get back to it later. Okay, I'm gonna go to continue editing. We're gonna talk more about that later as well, but let's just go right back into the form here. Okay, perfect. We did make a couple selections as well, so I'll hit the validate option one more time. All we did was really add an Oakville, but I'll work from it with all the extra little exclamation points that we need to tackle. The things to notice on this screen is that some minor information came through because we chose Geo Warehouse. Okay, we have an assessment roll number, right? Copying in that number from Geo Warehouse would have just been extra time on our hands, copying the PIN, putting in our address, putting in the land description, right? Some things have come through. So it's, again, it's not overwhelming what Geo provides, but you do get some things from Geo Warehouse. I find it really useful to link one to the other as well. It gives you a little bit of a confirmation that you have the right property in mind. Okay, perfect. So we know that that's where that came from. And let's go ahead and tackle some other ones here. So I'll make a few quick selections. I know these ones aren't overly crucial, but let's go street. We're in the Halton region. We are in Oakville. Okay, so we have one here that might require a little bit of research, right? What neighborhood or sub-district has the board chosen for where this property is going to land on the map? Got a whole list here, right? Maybe I don't know this right at this point. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to hit validate at this point. Confirm the other couple that we put in, Halton and Oakville. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you a really, really good way to get the neighborhood. It's going to have a lot to do with the neighborhood tab, if you remember from the layers icon, and we're going to work that from the map in our next step. So we'll leave that one here. We'll actually double back to it in a moment. Okay, working through, we have our legal land description. I'm not exactly sure of the zoning, so let's go with that. Let's go acres range. Okay. And okay, just gonna put some quick ones. Of course, your descriptions are going to be a lot better north of Lakeshore. Perfect. Right, we kind of saw that it was making its way from Lakeshore right on the corner lot here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that in. I'm going to make up a random number here. I'm actually never ran a CMA of this area to try and find what it's worth, but I would imagine it's worth a lot more than when it was purchased in the 90s. Okay, we're going to pick a random number here as well. Okay, just wanted to get some things into this screen just so that we can validate and try and get it down to only the neighborhood in this case. As I mentioned, I'm not going to fill out every single tab. We're going to talk about the important ones, especially once we get into commencement dates, things like that. We're going to talk about those a bit more, but just wanted to make some quick selections. So the only thing remaining right now on this screen is our neighborhood and subdistrict, which we're going to be able to double back to. Okay, let's make our way into the map tab and start taking some steps. The final step that we take is going to be the confirmation of the neighborhood, but I'll show you something extremely important in the map tab. Okay, so often I find a listing that's just pinned in the wrong location. Can't tell you how frustrating that is because it is so easy to get this correct. Okay, I'll show you in really just a few steps here how to pin the location so it's right every single time. What I want to do just before we do that is show you what a nightmare scenario can look like if you really, really get this wrong, right? Because we're working with latitude and longitude. That's going to be the global positioning of that listing that we're working from right now. So we need to track that down correctly. I'm not going to go to Google Maps and copy it into here and then copy my longitude. I'm just not going to take that risk, okay? Even if I was an expert in doing this myself and I had a little globe in my room or something, I probably wouldn't do it, okay? But you're going to end up setting it manually. I'll show you that in a second. Let's just look at some nightmares here, okay? I'm going to go to fun tool here, Realtor.ca, Canadian listings in Canada. I'm just going to type in Oakville and start to zoom out on the map here, okay? And what I'm trying to do is just show you, right? If you get the pin very, very wrong, it could get out of hand quick. We are in Russia and Mongolia, and there's some Canadian listings out here. There's always culprits on the other side of the planet, okay? So yeah, these pins are not right. If I hover some of these, we've got Winnipeg, Manitoba, Echo Lake, Saskatchewan, and last but not least, another Echo Lake or Emma Lake, Saskatchewan. So what are these two different? Oh, those are two different lakes. Okay, cool. Well, these listing agents, unfortunately, I'm glad that there's no Ontario listings right now when we go to have a look. Sometimes I see a lot of like East Coast and Calgary ones and stuff like that. But yeah, these are real listings. If my client found their property on Realtor.ca in southern Russia, I would be so embarrassed. Okay, do not do this. Okay, this is a result of incorrectly pinning the location on the map. All right, perhaps the only thing I can come up with is that the individual tried to put in the latitude longitude manually, whatever it is, like 43 dot and then like negative whatever in the world it ends up being. Again, I'm not confident enough to do that myself. They made a mistake somewhere in pinning those locations. You want to get this right, okay? It's really, really easy to get it right. It's also easy to get it wrong. As you can see, some people have put out listings in the wrong locations, okay? But let's take those couple of steps to get it right. It starts with clicking on Set Latitude, Longitude manually. From here, okay? Because on our first screen, we had provided information of the address, we validated, we even kind of went over and visually we knew what it would look like because of GeoWarehouse. Well, the system is going to give us a bit of an example. It's going to say, hey, I believe your property is like right in this type of area here. It's just kind of helping us out a bit so we don't have to start from a zoomed out Ontario, okay? You can even hit locate. It'll center even more, for example, okay? But what you're trying to do on this screen is you're setting a pin. As you notice here, when I make my way onto the map, my cursor changes into this little crosshair. Well, all it's asking me to do is track down the property, whether I'm zooming in, zooming out to get to it, find where I want, and click where I want the pin. We know it's on the corner of Church and Navy. This is the pin. You can change it to where you'd like, center it. We know it's kind of a bit of a rectangular lot, right? Maybe I want it right on the building. Whatever the case is, this pin is going to be what is going to provide the longitude, latitude, okay? Let's leave it right there, kind of centered as far as the way the lot is designed here, okay? And now I'm going to hit locate one more time, okay? And it will kind of recircle with this as the spot of the pin. That's it. Click on manual, set the pin, click locate, hit done. Let's call it a 4-step process, okay? It's giving me the 43 dot, all the values, -79, all the values, right? I'm not going to go and try to do this on Google Maps and copy it over. Again, click on set longitude, latitude manually. Okay, if you want to place a new pin, you can do that, right? You click on the map to set it, locate, done. That's it. You know where it is, you visually found it, you compared it to Geo Warehouse even that you have open in another tab. You know what it should look like right at the corner of which intersection or whatever the case may be. Okay, and that's that step. Go ahead and hit done. Okay, perfect. So with this, we have set our pin. Last thing that we are going to do on the map, right? You can see already, like because we've set it, it is kind of giving us a bit of a confirmation that this section is complete. We don't have an exclamation point on here anymore. Even if we want to hit the validate option for our own peace of mind, we can go ahead and do that. What we're going to do now is, if you remember, from the property tab, we just had to pull in a bit of our neighborhood. So let's have a quick peek at that section. We're going to go back into set manually, not to make any changes to it, but just because the map provides us with a layers icon. So what we can do is we can activate the neighborhood just as we did on our search. You could already see the colors coming through. And by zooming out even just a little bit, we can start to see the correct neighborhood. We have Central Oakville on the left side of this waterway, and we have Old Oakville anything to the right in this square. And we definitely are landing in our pin within Old Oakville. That's how we're going to know which neighborhood to correctly choose for the input. Just hit cancel here. We've already done those steps. So if I just hit cancel, it knows what it's up to there. Oh, sorry, it looks like it's giving me, it's just loading there. Go back to the property tab. This is all staying the same. We didn't make any changes, right? Go to our property tab, and now we can confidently choose the right one. We're not unsure anymore. Is it Central Oakville? Is it Old Oakville? Right? We looked at the map section. We double checked. Now we know we have the correct setting for our neighborhood as well. Okay, we can hit validate. And just like that, we've tackled the first 3 tabs of our input. And we're on the right footing now, right? Really, really important start. So let's go in, and now we're going to start just tackling, now that we know kind of how to update and work through it really slowly there, let's have a look at maybe some of the ones that cause some questions. So the first one here, as I mentioned, commencement date. Okay, it's really, really important. The commencement date, how it works in the eyes of, as I mentioned, we want to avoid fines. We're not here to hand out fines. We want you to put in the information correctly. It needs to be a standard for the way it's displayed. How the commencement date works is that you have within 24 hours to list the property on the MLS system from the date of signed commencement. Okay? If the commencement date is today, I just met with my client over lunch, I'm going to be posting their listing on the market. Today's my commencement date. I have until midnight tomorrow night to list it on the MLS system. Okay, within 24 hours means the following day at midnight. Okay, so for my commencement date, perhaps I have already signed with my client. We have our commencement date, we have our property information sheet signed. Let's go ahead and choose today's date and hit OK. Your expiration date is also going to be something set out by your contract, so that one is not to worry. I'll just choose the end of the month to keep it simple. Okay, and it looks like the rest here, very, very specific between your agreement with your client and how your brokerage setup is. So I'm not going to jump in and click any of these. Okay, Locksbox type setups when it comes to your showing instructions, very, very straightforward for you to work through those as well. We don't have any common elements. If you remember, it is something that is, right, if we chose condo and condo unit under our general property type, well, you would see this thing light up, right? There would be a whole bunch of mandatory options because we'd be working from the condo as an importance. Making our way into exterior interior. I'm just going to double check if there's some big menu items here before we move on. right? Municipal sewers, things like that. This screen, very, very straightforward. Pretty much an identical drag and kind of select from what you see on your property information sheet. You'll also select here, interior. Okay, when it comes to maybe this section here, just to shed a little bit of light on it, because I do seem to get some questions from time to time. When it comes to your square footage, okay, your square footage source is not something that we're hounding down and chasing people for their square footage source. Okay, I get this question from time to time. The only importance is that you have some paperwork that matches why you made that decision. Okay, if you, whether it's a building plans that, or a floor layout that you purchased from Geo Warehouse, let's say, and it states a certain square footage, well, that's more than enough, right? If you got it from public record or whatever the case may be, if you can just show what the source is, right? This is more so to avoid, like, in case someone ever went after you and said, hey, that's the wrong square footage, well, all you would have to do is show us where you got it. Okay, that's enough of a confirmation. Okay, this isn't like a huge comparison to commencement date, right? It's not as much of a strict section. You do just have to back up here. Why did you choose that square footage? Did you measure out this above grade size and calculate it yourself? Just show where you made that calculation, right? So we can double check it and get to the kind of the correct answer type of thing. But again, you do have to make a selection here of where it came from. Just be prepared. Keep that paperwork with your property information sheet. That's the extent of kind of the requirement here, okay? Which leaves us with kind of a final section here. When it comes to our room details, I want to say this section in full, because there is some stuff to talk about. It is going to be a roughly 8 to 10 minutes. So just in case, if you are out of time, for those that, I did go a little bit over the 2:30 and I started getting some messages. So I do want to just mention, no problem. If you're missing part of this for any reason, I do apologize. I did go very thoroughly in some of the sections. I tried to answer some questions throughout. If you are taking off, don't worry, this is a recorded session. In a few days, once it comes back from my communications department, it will be uploaded to our website where you can view that final little bit as well. So if you're taking off, I totally understand, and apologies, it is my fault. I did speak for too long, but rather than rush this section, I'm just gonna stay at the same pace. The content will be available to you, okay? But really, thank you so much for joining if you are in the boat that you must leave. Okay, no problem. When we get to our rooms, okay, there are some very important things to get correct in here as well. So we're going to spend a little bit of time comparing a bedroom, a bathroom, right? What are the mandatory requirements here? And I'll show you some comparisons at the end as well, so we can really get our mind around it. Something that may seem a little bit new as far as the input on ITSO Real Estate, first off is, and at least they provided us some examples here, the way that you enter the dimensions is a tiny bit different than what you may remember from OnRegional, okay? If I am making a selection and I'm going to enter the dimensions for a particular room, as it says, right? 8 feet 10 inches. It turns into 8.10. Okay, don't think of it as a decimal place, right? This isn't 8.1. It's trying to describe that there are 10 inches and 8 feet. Okay, that's just the way they designed the system, so bear that in mind. It might come through a little bit different, right? 9.01 is 9 feet 1 inch. Just understand this system. And it does mention you cannot enter a 12. If you enter 19 feet 12 inches, you would just be entering 20 feet instead as an even number. Okay, so a couple of things to bear in mind there. As well, it does talk about don't try to do 1/3, 3/4. It's still, you know, 1/3 of a foot, 4 inches being 0.04. So you'll see me enter some of those in here as we work through. We're going to start with, let's go main floor bedroom. Something really, really standard that is probably going to happen on a lot of properties. So let's go with that. Main floor bedroom. Typically what I do on this screen before I proceed with my dimensions, okay, I choose the room type and then I hit validate. Okay, and my reason for that is because it'll update and it will kind of follow through and tell me what stuff is mandatory based on that room type. In this case, for a bedroom, it ends up being the dimensions. Okay, the dimensions are super important. It hasn't specified that I must do any kind of room features. The bedroom is really, really important to get the dimensions in, however. If I do a different one, such as a main floor bathroom, and then hit validate, you'll see that the option is slightly different. It did not specify that it's mandatory that I put in my dimensions, but instead the mandatory portion is specifying how many pieces are in this bathroom. Is it a half bath? Is it a full bath? So we'll talk about that more in a moment, but just notice that there is a difference in the input here. A room is going to be different than a bathroom, first off, okay? Let's go ahead and put some dimensions in here just so we can kind of work from something. We're going to say that there's a main floor bedroom. Again, there isn't one at the Oakville office, but the main floor bedroom we're going to say is 18 feet, okay, 7 inches, 18.07, and that the width is 17 feet 1 inch. Okay, remembering the way the system is kind of having us create that information. Here it is. And was that feet or meters? We did it in feet. Okay, perfect. So that's our description of the main floor bedroom. Hit validate, perhaps just to get the peace of mind that that part came through properly, that we didn't make any errors. Maybe it is our first time working through this, right? I know the first time that I did it, I went 17.1, thinking that that was 17 1 inch. It is not. Okay, it's over here. You do have to put that 0 in front. Just bear that in mind, okay? So I'll hit the validate option here. Now we have a main floor bathroom. So what does this room feature, what is it trying to tell us? Okay, well, if a bathroom is composed of 3 pieces or more, then it is considered a full bath. Okay, so talking like sink, toilet, shower, let's say. Well, that's 3-piece. We would select 3-piece, and by result, our bathroom would be considered a full bath. If it is perhaps just a 1-piece or a 2-piece bath, then it takes the description of a half bath. We're going to look at examples. We'll talk about that a little bit further in a few steps as well. But for right now, let's go with kind of more of a simple one. We're just going to go with full bath in this case. Okay, and we'll hit the validate option. Perfect. Noticing that we did not have to put in the dimensions. Okay, this doesn't mean that I'm going to leave these dimensions out if I have them. If I have the dimensions of that bathroom, I'm probably going to put them in, right? Any extra information you could put is only going to help. So if you have it, if you already signed with your client and you know those dimensions, throw them in. But the important thing is here, you must provide dimensions of the rooms. If you don't have them from floor plans or builder's plans, and I get this call sometimes, honestly, you're not going to like my answer, but you may have to pull out a measuring tape and find that information out. Okay, you must provide this. If you get a laser pointer, whatever the way is that you determine the dimensions to make it efficient for yourself, if you can't get it from a document, you may have to go physically over there and, yeah, get these dimensions. Okay, you must include them. If I don't have them, right, I might save as incomplete. I might come back to this later. Okay. Let's go back to continue editing. Okay, so yeah, that's gonna go. It's gonna be the case for that's just particularly bathroom is not required. All other rooms you do have to put some dimensions in there. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I am gonna put in one more bedroom, just as an example, because we're going to talk about that a little bit. What I'm going to do is we will end up making some comparisons between the ITSO system and TREB in a moment, just to make sure that we get a good idea of what the three piece is, what is a +1 in a bedroom. There are some notes to take there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'm actually going to do a basement bedroom. Okay, we know that we're going to need to do our length and width. Okay, so perhaps we're going to go 15.10, 10, I don't know, 17.02. Okay, so we have 15 feet 10 inches, 17 feet 2 inches. Let's go ahead and put it in feet in this case, and I'm not going to choose a room feature. So let's hit validate. The reason why I put a bedroom in the basement was because in a moment, when we look at an example, we might just try to track down a property so I can make this comparison really well. But what would happen as a result is this property, as far as the bedrooms are concerned, right now would be a 1+1. Okay, this is something that is across the board for participating boards of ITSO Real Estate. A +1 in the eyes of a bedroom is a room below grade. That's the +1 aspect. If there's a bedroom below the ground floor or below grade, it would result in a +1. So this property right now is, as far as rooms are concerned, 1+1. As far as bathrooms are concerned, 1, because we chose full bath. If we chose half bath, instead, it would be 0.5. Okay, I'm just going to hit validate. What we'll do is, perhaps I can save this as incomplete. Let's come back to it, because that comparison, maybe we spend a little bit of time digesting that information. We're going to jump back to the input in a second. What would be the best way to do that? Let's do a residential search. I'm going to leave it really, really open. I know typically I'll put a 0 here and I'll choose a location. Let's just see kind of what it looks like. What comes through first? Because we're really just looking to find a good comparison here across. Can we find some pluses? Okay, something like this. Okay, not that one. Let's go. I just want to find one that's put in. Oh, I'll put more on the page. So I'm trying to find one that has like a +1 in the bed and bath. And let me see, is there an easier way for me? Let's do, what is the easiest way for me to find it? You know what? We will track it down. Might take us a quick second, but we'll get it. I had some images for the session. However, I noticed at the last second that they were actually outdated because they weren't screenshots that I took on ITSO. So we're not going to use those screenshots. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to find this one here. What I wanted to do is find one that was a +1 and a +1, and that we could tell was inputted by a member of ITSO Real Estate. Okay, whatever board this member is, looks like the property itself is in Brampton, but let's have a look at how this comes through as a 4+1 and a 3+1. So we'll click on this listing. It does give us, in the new layout here and description of the properties, it also gives us a very quick kind of column chart of kind of like columns and rows here where we can determine where these rooms are situated, right? Whether it's in the basement, the main floor, or the second floor. And we can see AG, BG, F, and H. What are those referring to? It's kind of those descriptions that we talked about. At least now there's a bit of a summary, which helps a little bit, I find. We do have 5 total bedrooms in this property. Okay, 4 of them are above grade. So all that's trying to tell us is that 4 of these 5 bedrooms are main floor or higher. Okay, and 1 of them is below the main floor, which is below grade. The reason why I really, really want to show you this is there is a comparison to make here to the TREB system. Understanding that for their system, a +1 means something very, very different. Okay, if you're looking at a property on Stratus and you're searching and you find something that's a +1, it won't be a bedroom below grade in their case. They describe that as a den. Okay, whatever description that has. For ours, maybe we list it as an office or whatever the case may be, or a really small room, right? Well, just know that this +1 is something different on those two boards. So bear that in mind as you're looking, and this is the same for every participating board on ITSO Real Estate. If it's a +1, okay, it means there's a room in the basement. Simple, right? If you're looking on Stratus, this will mean that it's a den. So make note of that, write it down as you get used to it. Just important to, understand that and differentiate there, okay? For our bathroom example, it's what we talked about with full bath and half bath, F and H. There are 3 full baths, which means that this property has 3 bathrooms that individually they have 3 or more features. There's also 1 in this property that's a half bath, so it either has 1 or 2 features. No matter what, it just has less than 3, and it qualified as a half bath. So there are 4 total baths, okay? However, 3 are full baths, 1 is a half bath, okay? The important thing here is as well, if we look into this a little bit further by tracking down our rooms, we'll get even more of a description of that, okay? Having a look through, hopefully I remember the right numbers. The bathroom was the last one we talked about. I think it was a 3+1. So let's have a look here, right? If we even look at the room features, 3-piece, 3-piece, right? 3-piece, 2-piece. That's where we ended up with our half bath, okay? Everything else, 3-piece being the full baths, okay? When it comes to our bedrooms as well. So let me see, what's the best way? If we have, okay, we have bedroom 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we have 4 bedrooms on the 2nd floor, it looks like, and 1 in the basement. This is where we got our +1. The one that's below grade is because it was chosen here that it's below ground. The rest of them are on the 2nd floor. Oops, I selected too much there. The rest are on the 2nd floor. The other 4 bedrooms are above grade. It gave us a 4+1. Okay. If you have more questions about that, we can always come back and talk about it a little bit more in the question and answer period. But just make note that, right, there might be some slight differences here. It looks like I hit the wrong property here, but that's okay. That was all I wanted to do there was just make sure that you kind of had a look at, of course, the description there of differentiation and comparison here. When you're working between this system and the Stratus system, there might be some things to take into account. Okay, when it comes to bathrooms on the Stratus system, it's going to be really important to note one thing as well. Their decimal system's a bit different. Okay, so perhaps they're showing you instead of a bathroom being a 1+1, perhaps they're showing 1.5, right? Bear that in mind. I think last time I looked at it, I'm not sure if that's been changed as of yet. Ours is going to show you that 1+1 is 1 full bath, 1 half bath. On the Stratus system, I believe that it's a decimal system, and every 0.5 is a half bath. So if you have a full bath and a half bath, instead of 1+1, you would see 1.5. Unless something has changed in the recent months, I believe that would be the case. That's how it was last time that I was kind of looking in there. But note that ours is trying to show you it a bit more visually there. You'll see the 1+1, and you'll understand that the +1 is the half bath, of course. Okay, I'm going to go back into the residential ad edit that we saved as incomplete here, and just finish off a couple final points here in conclusion. We'll hit validate as well. We did our rooms already, but as we look down, okay, of course, inclusion, public remarks, some final notes to take here. Really, like, these are going to be kind of simple. But when it comes to your public remarks, please, one thing that's really important with listing information these days, as you saw, we went to Realtor.ca and found properties in Russia that are in Canada. Like that, make sure that your public remarks are clear and that they could be understood by anyone. Because nowadays, the truth is, it's not only your colleagues and other real estate agents looking at properties. Sometimes, I'm sure you've gotten this, your client is going to present a property to you in some cases. To make that all come full circle in your marketing, you're probably going to want to make this so that anybody can understand. I wouldn't put in, I wouldn't just start a message like this, and I've seen them go on and on and on with only things that realtors would understand. You really want to make this so that all of your audience can understand the details of the property. So please take the time to put in a nice message. You have an incredible amount of space to do this. 2,000 characters that count down as you type. Okay, I had 2,000 characters available. I put in a few words, right? It was the result of 21 characters there. Let's split it up with the letter test, and I'm just going to copy paste this as we go. Okay, watching how it goes down. Like, look at the size of this paragraph. There's still 500 characters remaining. I wrote a massive paragraph here. If I keep going and I go over, it'll start to tell me once I've gone over. 2 left. I'm over by 2 characters, right? It tells you what the max is and what it'll allow. This is such a huge paragraph. Use this time to give a good description of the property so that anyone can understand, right? You're going to want to make use of this space. Don't just put one sentence. And also stay away from spelling remarks, of course, right? It's public. It's going on Realtor.ca. Right. You want to make it kind of everywhere that everyone can see. Okay. As far as your final screens that I'll talk about very, very briefly here, you do have some new ones, right? There's auxiliary buildings, green, and waterfront. So we'll just take a quick minute here to have a look at these. I find them to be very, very straightforward. If there is something that you would describe from your property information sheet, really that's the only time you're going to make use of them. Okay. If I put waterfront as a yes, maybe I am selling a property, up in Kawartha Lakes or something like that. Something that's very typical is that you would state the waterfront square footage, right? Things to do with the waterfront. You would find the actual water body type. If you happen to find yourself using this, okay, how you find it is from this search. Find a water body. You need to track down the actual place. Long Lake, whatever the case may be, you're going to track it down, run the search, and pin it. Do I know any that I could just use really quick? Is Long Lake a thing? I might have just made that up. Okay, so I would look through here, I would select the one that's in there, and kind of add it in. What type of water body? Is it a lake? Is it a river? Right? You do find it from this section, and you would end up filling out the rest of the straightforward results that kind of have to do with the waterfront tab. Okay. When it comes to auxiliary buildings, all this means is, hey, is there something else on this lot? Are you selling a house that also has a big separated garage or barn or boathouse or something like that? So all you're doing is really you're making a selection here, right? Is there whatever nanny suite or whatever else might be kind of separated if it's not above and attached to the structure, let's say, right? You might choose something in this section. Maybe it is just a garage and there isn't bed and bath or anything like that. Is it winterized? Right? You make the selection and it looks a lot like the room description. If there's more than one, you can add on an additional one. Okay. I'm just going to select, put this back to normal. And the final one, a bit of a newer tab here. How environmentally friendly is this section? Have there been improvements that have to do specifically with environmentally friendly things? You would describe them in the green section. Okay. As you finish up, of course, we're just going to save this as incomplete at this point. You'll notice that, I might have to deal with the waterfront, so let's get rid of it. Actually, we'll put it as a no. We didn't really select anything in there. Save as incomplete. Perfect. First time it did not save. Notice that I didn't get the message, so we went and dealt with what caused it. Really, really important step. Okay. When you do save as incomplete, it does give you an MLS number. Okay. Maybe we'll copy this just so I have it. As well, this is one of the screens that allows you to do an add edit for the photos. Supplements as well, right? Is there surveys or Schedule Bs or anything? Well, the add edit section here is where you're going to add in the photos of the property. And much like the commencement date, there is a big importance here. You must post an image of the property within 24 hours. Same thing as the commencement date. If this listing goes live, you have until midnight the following day to provide an image of the property. If you don't have one, you really just may have to go there and take one on your phone, right? Whatever the case may be, you must have one. Much like how your commencement date, the listing must go up in 24 hours, it must also have an image to describe the property within 24 hours, okay? You're gonna go in and browse these. You can have up to 50. A very large amount of photos is allowed, much like your massive description that's allowed. So make use of that. Give a really good description of the property. Here's where you add them in. One more place where you may make that selection is instead, I'm gonna have to read this later actually. Instead, if you go into the add edit, okay, once you save something as incomplete, you will see it in the drop down here, okay? I can make the selection. I know I have this incomplete listing, and it gives me my manipulation options. Okay, yours will look different than mine. I've got some staff options through here. Depending on your access, yours is going to look a little bit different, but this modification screen is what gives you all of your status changes, right? When it moves over to conditional, goes to pending, makes its way towards a firm sale, whatever the case may be, you're going to be selecting it and making it from your modify listing section. As well, you can come here to add your photos and even enable showing time if you're using that for this listing, for example. Okay. What I'm going to do here is I am going to hit cancel. And what we're going to do is just how do we preview this listing, right? Maybe we're not ready to throw it up just yet on the MLS system, and we want to get a quick look at what it kind of what it looks like here. So what we're going to do is go to My Matrix, My Listings, and you'll notice that perhaps I was on a different screen before and it would just be the 0 showing. Well, you want to make a selection for your incomplete and pending activation listings. And you could see that there is one live here. The silly numbers that we chose and the things that we happen to fill in, well, we can get an idea of them. We did finish with a full bath, the 1+1, right? Remembering this is a room above grade, one room below grade. We can see a Geo Warehouse link because we chose an ARN and a PIN and we filled from Geo, right? Some things, really, really good things to start out. We click on that, we can get an idea. I really did not fill out a lot of stuff here, but you would get a preview of your listing, okay? What I'd like to do at this point, that really does wrap up kind of this second section now where we went over the input tab in detail. As far as some final things to leave with you, okay, remember that when you approach that tab, first of all, there's a couple major things that you want to get right. The first one is starting from either Geo Warehouse or starting from a blank listing if you weren't the one that posted it on the MLS system the last time, okay? Take ownership for your work. I'd be very wary of taking over ownership of somebody else's work, so start there. Make your way through by validating and confirming that you save as incomplete. When you get to your map section, set your latitude, longitude manually. You saw the steps. It's very, very quick and easy to do. Make sure you get that right. Okay. What I would like to do as a final note before we start the question and answer period is just provide you with the location where you can find the recording of this video. If you make your way to the OMDREB website, I just went to OMDREB.ca, click on the members area. You're going to log in with your OMID and password. And this should look familiar. Welcome, it'll say hello type of thing. This is just the home tab of your members area. Same place where you're going to look at your membership dues, all that kind of stuff. When you scroll down, you will see the video training bank. This is where you can access recorded sessions that we have put on and perhaps keynote speakers have put on as well, anyone that allowed us to record this session. So this is one that will get updated. As far as you can see the list of some of the other ones we've had on rotation, introduction to matrix, intermediate, right? We're going to end up even updating these, even though these were very recent, we're going to end up updating these as well. Now that today was the first time that it was done on ITSO, as I mentioned, but in a few days, just allow some time there for me to get it back from editing and everything from my communications department, and they will be up so that you can view them at your own leisure. If you work through this video training bank, okay, the top ones are the OMDREB ones that perhaps myself or Brian have put on. If it is a speaker that we had in our events department organized, you might be able to find some very, very useful webinars that were put on in the past as well. Feel free to jump in those and have a look.